Yeah, so one thing we definitely did not think about when naming the company was to stand on a stage in Norway talking about it, but we're not going to make any promises because Steve Jobs said that one of his biggest regrets was when he promised Apple Records, Beatles record company, that he would never go into music. So never say never, we'll see. But I want to just start a little bit, you know, who here had access to the internet in 95 and 96? There's quite a few. Now, we are at a point, I believe, of somewhere where the internet was between 96 and 98. And there was always one thing that was lacking as the internet developed. You know, you would even hear some kind of, what you can say, dreamers saying we will be able to teleport people and things through the internet. But that's actually a thing that is now being solved with drones, and so at least that will be a mediocre solution until we get to the teleport stage. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we decided to go into drones. I need to give you just a short intro of what we do to explain our perspective, our present point, and recent developments. And I'm going to talk about the importance of perception and the different perceptions there are. So we founded the company in 2011, and we built online marketplace and logistic businesses. And one of the things I learned, I was just a cog in the wheel during the internet era. I was a programmer working for Vodafone, and you know, you could see those that made really good strides. You know, not everyone succeeded, but those that really took part in the industry were those that had found one single perspective to look at the industry from. So Google looked at it from search, Amazon from e-commerce and logistics, and so on. So we've been focusing on the e-commerce and logistic perspective of the drone industry. Now, we have customers in 2/3 of households in Reykjavik. They can order anything from clothes, hot food, groceries, toasters, Belgian waffle makers. All of these things we've sent by drone. And we do online retail and last mile logistics for over 100 third-party retailers. So we don't have any warehouse or anything. So you can think of it like a chaotic logistic problem. We get an order, we pick it up from the retailer, and we deliver it to the customer using electric cars mostly. So in 2014, when we had started to grow our car fleet, we realized that we were heading in the wrong direction. Basically, our company was going bankrupt fast. So operating these was extremely expensive. We have almost no unemployment in Iceland. We have high salaries, probably a bit similar situation to here. And basically, the customers weren't ready to pay the fees needed to support the cars. And we didn't have enough orders. So we started thinking about any simple solution that could be taken to solve this problem. We started looking into ground robotics, and we spoke to the transport authority in Iceland about the ground robotics, and they said, yes, we are keen to allow you to try this out. And once we got there, we called the company that we were working with in the UK, and they said, look, we had some traction in Washington, please wait for 6 months. And then I called them back a week later, and they said we had some traction in Germany and the UK, so 6 years at least before we go to Iceland. It's such a small market. So we went back to the authorities and said, look, we have a few other technologies we would like to try. We didn't tell them about drones at this stage. But if we cannot move now, we will probably be the last. So we moved from gasoline cars to electric cars, and not only from the perspective of energy consumption, the electric cars have turned out to be almost 50% more cost efficient than gasoline cars. Now, once you move from that stage to drones, you get another 10 times in efficiency, you get much faster speed, much better for the environment, it's lower cost, and in the end, what people, general public doesn't really get the grasp that a drone is such a much simpler machine than a car is. A car is an extremely complicated machine, and it still is and will continue to be. Now, We have a very large city geographically, but sparsely populated. So we have, in the greater Reykjavik area, we have 192 people per square kilometer. We have low unemployment. Yeah, we've gone through that. And it was really hard for us to use bikes like many of the delivery companies will do in other countries during winter. So getting to this point I was explaining before, when we spoke to the authorities about drones for the first time, it was like, you know, they looked a little bit down and then they looked up at us and said, well, it's going to be hard. We are extremely busy. We have tourism and everything. But in the end, they got back to us based on this, you know, either we're going to be ahead of the curve or Iceland is going to be the very last, because it's not going to be interesting to implement a new technology in Iceland if it's already being implemented elsewhere. They still said you will have to go through every security regulation there is. You will have to go through the aviation part and basically solve all of those things. 5 authorities were needed to approve, the aviation authority, the aviation operator, like Avinor here, and the police, the city of Reykjavik, and the Ministry of Transport. So what is good about Iceland? One of the best things about Iceland is the weather for this industry. So if you think about, you know, we are trying to solve, you know, a problem which relates to wind. And the fact that we have wind almost guaranteed every other or every 3 days allows us to test conditions, not over the city though, you know, that we do not see elsewhere. Our technology partners, they've been waiting for rain now for 4 weeks. So, you know, we get frequent rain and can test all of these things. And this has kind of put us to think a lot outside the box. Now, you know, there are different ways to test wind, and they're actually not testing wind in this video, I found out, but you know, they have been testing wind like this elsewhere, where they basically drive a car and try to land on it. So when we talk about sparsely populated cities, just getting back to that whole thing, is if you look at the city of Milton Keynes in the UK, it's a city that was built in 1961 or designed in 1961. It's not like any other UK city. So in a circle with a radius of 5 kilometers, you have about the population of Iceland, not almost the full population, but almost. Now, all of the convenience economy solutions like Deliveroo and these solutions, they are focused on the metropolitan areas. And I don't think we will see a lot of drones in central London or central Oslo or these locations. I think simply because just delivering the packets will be too cumbersome in such a tight area. Maybe when we design the buildings for it, but not at first. And if we look at, you know, just a normal neighborhood in this city, then this is 4,800 people per square kilometer. So this is much more dense than the general population in Reykjavik. And so it's a totally different market from that perspective. Anyway, so now I'm going to go a little bit more into the tech and perception. So we have basically had a constantly challenging environment, and I think the key here has been good cooperation and understanding from the authorities. So this is our first version of the drone, and that was also the video you saw earlier. And we basically, one thing to explain, we have been extremely focused on being an operator, not being a technology company. We still have 9 certified drone pilots which can fly up to 25 kilos, even if they fly automatically. And we have drone engineers, but we have been very focused on just sourcing the best technology available. Now, we got our license finally in August 2017. From May 2018, we got multiple new routes. It's autonomous and beyond visual line of sight. The current drones we use can take up to 3 kilos, and we have 10 kilos in the next generation, which we are getting in 6 to 8 weeks. We might, however, not carry 10 kilos with it. We might limit ourselves to 6 kilos for operational safety reasons. Now, what we have learned is basically if we try to push too fast, literally nothing happens. Something will fail with the authorities, with the public, with the, the regulators. So it's really important to work on the public perception. And we really shifted over the last maybe 6 to 9 months into public perception mode. So we are doing these presentations not only here. I was in London last week. We've done a few in Iceland and Poland and a few other places. Because when people see that it actually works, people become positive over time. Even in Iceland, you know, people live in Iceland, they never see the drone because it really doesn't take a lot of space. It isn't noisy. It isn't really until they actually see it that they say, okay, there's something going on here. That's gonna change things. So in air delivery, this is what we moved towards with one of our technology partners, Flytrex, in May 2018. And this is a huge difference because how we were operating before we did this is that we would fly to the customer and we would send a driver to the customer to certify the aircraft to take off again after delivering the package. It was simply not safe enough to land near the customer, and I don't think it ever will be safe, you know, to land these kinds of aircraft near the customer, not until we can somehow shield their propellers. And we've tried this in very different weathers, and the last one you will see there is between 13 and 15 meters per second measured in air. It's coming now in a second. 2.5 kilo package, and what you will see is that it will swear a lot to the right on the screen, but the drone still stays fixed in the air like it's glued to the sky. And this kind of testing has been extremely important for us because we kind of know the limits of what can be done fairly well. You know, we know the limits of not only the drone, but also the delivery mechanism, which has been tried thousands, I think even more than 10,000 times now in testing. So this is, you know, this is working much better than we really believed it would work. Now, I try to explain to people how fast the technology is moving. When we started, nobody was thinking a lot about rainproof drones. Now, rainproof drones will probably be the norm within 2 or 3 years. So already DJI has solved this quite well. Others have solved this quite well as well. So the drone we are buying now and have invested in, it can take rain. It can take 20% more wind. It has almost double the range that we have on the other drone. The power to weight ratio is totally different. So our old drone is 11 kilos and will take 3 kilos of weight. This drone is 11 kilos and can carry 10 kilos of weight. So the shift is happening much faster than we believed ourselves. So the system we have set up with the aviation authorities, and you know, there's a lot of more knowledgeable people than me in the room, is that we kind of invented the wheel. So, you know, we have been working on an exemption basis. We set up flexible routes within the city. So all our flights go along these routes, but once we get to the delivery, we can deviate from the route up to 700 meters. But that's according to some very strict rules where we are now self-certified. And I think the key there has been that so the drone industry in Iceland has been driven by search and rescue, which has been operating quite well, and Hollywood. But the general sentiment has been, let's fly and ask for forgiveness later. And that's our biggest worry. So we have not taken off once without permission. And I think that has helped us build up trust. But our biggest worry is drones. It's not airplanes, it's actually drones. And it's drones that are operated by kids, by, you know, others that we need to be mindful of rather than anything else. But I would be more worried from an aircraft perspective when it comes to that. So we have done our first backyard deliveries. So now we actually have people that can order direct to their backyard. All the others are ordering to some public delivery points in Reykjavik. So this backyard, for example, before he got to order into the backyard, he had to go about 100 meters to a public delivery point to get his delivery. And this makes a huge difference because the customer really doesn't care how his product is delivered, but the neighbor will care if the drone flies overhead. But he didn't make an order. So this brings me to the point of public perception. Now, here we are delivering almost 3 kilos, and we are looking to expand this quite a lot into a few neighborhoods in Reykjavik right now. So we have not done any PR on ourselves. So we have been talking at conferences and certain things, but we do not have a PR company or anything operating for us. However, a lot of people have been pointing towards us for examples, which has helped us a lot. So now, 3 weeks ago, World Economic Forum made a video after economists took an interview with us that explains the system very well. And this is extremely important because when you look at the perceptions, there's actually a few perceptions to think about. It's a media perception, and media is currently very positive, mostly. I mean, we have both sides there. Then you have the public perception, and that's the public, that's the neighbor, or that's a drone is flying over my house kind of issues. And then you have the consumer perception, and the consumer really doesn't care. He's hungry, he needs clothes, or he doesn't really care how it's delivered. You'd never think about that today when it comes to that. And then you have kind of two types of authorities, and that's you have the regulator, and the regulator is the ones that you are working with to set the rules, or who makes the rules and presents them. And then you have the authority, like, when we were setting this up, we called the police up and said we were asked to get the permission from you. And they deliberated about it for 2 weeks and called me back, and we really don't know how to deal with the flight safety issues. I said, that's not your role. That had to be made clear, that the police's role was simply more or less to be informed, to tell basically that they had informed the force, because they are the ones that get the calls when something goes wrong. And then partners versus competitors. So we have partners that we have been working with, especially Flightrex, which has been a fantastic partner, and then competitors, which mostly have said we are crazy up until now. So now, timing is also hard. So the whole drone industry is getting into a little bit of a mode, I think, where we are getting a little bit ahead of ourselves at the time that we should be taking one step at a time. So we look at what looks like a very futuristic kind of thing, and that technology might already be there. But I think we need to gradually grow the drones up until we get to this point. But then you show somebody this picture and say, this is what it's going to look like in the future. And I stand by that. I will bet with anyone in this room that we will have a situation like that. And most people say, no, that's not going to happen. Now, this company has the most amazing funding you will see. I think their first round was something like $90 million. And their first maiden flight they made 18 months ago. That's a 2-person aircraft. There's nobody in it at the moment, but they claim that they can fly on electricity 300 kilometers at a speed of up to 300 kilometers per hour, probably a lower cruising speed. But regardless, this will be I think, seismic shift in the way we look at cities and how we kind of build the infrastructure of countries in the future. I mean, what you could say, the local airport might end up being the shopping center, not the domestic airport it is now. So now the other thing that about public perception is that people do not notice. Everybody is worried about noise. You saw the drone earlier. I was amazed how quiet it was, for an indoor drone. Everybody is worried about noise. They're worried about the sky will be cluttered with drones. That's not going to happen, I believe. Here we are flying over a family park in Iceland last summer. There's a drone 30 meters beyond the people. They do not hear it. They do not notice it. But this is the biggest worry of the authorities. This is the biggest worry of the city of Reykjavik. But in general, nobody's really noticed what we're doing. We can fly 40 flights a day, but nobody notices, except for maybe a few people that saw it. And they don't really realize it's us. They just saw a drone. And the next generation has prepared. Here you see my son frustrated. He's programming a drone. And he's 8 years old there. And this is extremely important. So if you think about the work that DJI has done in this space, it's absolutely amazing how they approach this. So they have set out a $100 device that any kid can program in a very simple manner. So 10 years from now, my son is going to be 20 years old. He is not going to be surprised by getting a delivery by drone. He's already, we have a generation that is being prepared, that is talking about these things as they are completely normal. I mean, he programmed a drone when he was 8 years old, so why would this be a problem? Now, we will have a race of cities, and we are already seeing this in the UK. There's a race of cities taking part in this kind of infrastructure change. And we see the cities which have fairly simplistic decision-making, like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, where they can one person can make decisions for the whole city, and which are trialing out a lot of things as well. So, the only thing that is still very unclear, and what was talked about this morning, is how the regulation will unfold. And the other thing I think is in terms of safety, how do we implement a safety culture in the drone industry that works? Now, we are aiming at doing 50% of our deliveries via drone in Iceland. And many people would say this is futuristic. I mean, 1 year from now, I would have said 5%. So 1 year ago. I think this is changing much faster than people realize. Now, Iceland is not the optimal place to do this, but that doesn't mean that we cannot reach 50% in the weather we have been experiencing there. So that's it for me. I could talk on for probably 60 minutes more. So if anybody wants to talk about any specific things or has any questions, then I'm here all day.
Thank you so much.